Hey guys, today we saddle up for a slow ride into the dusty dawn of the Mongolian steppe, where breakfast doesn't come with a croissant or oat milk, but maybe with a splash of fermented mare's milk and something vaguely chewy pulled from a leather pouch tied to your saddle. You're bundled tight in fur and wool. Your boots are stiff with frost. And somewhere in the distance, your horse breathes visible steam like a sleepy dragon. The sun hasn't even properly risen yet. But your day is about to start, because, well, you're a Mongol horseman, and this empire isn't going to conquer itself. Now, you might fancy yourself a hardy traveler, the kind who could survive off the land. But unless you've got a strong stomach and an alarming tolerance for dairy in strange forms, you probably won't survive this breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, relax, maybe put on some soft music, and let's get started on today's journey together. You wake to cold wind and the low rumble of hooves. Your horse, still beside you, snorts as if to say about time. You slept wrapped in your deal, a heavy robe that smells like animal fat, wood smoke, and dreams of empire. Around you, the steppe rolls endlessly, vast and golden brown, as if the earth forgot to finish painting this part. There's no coffee shop on the horizon, no bakery warming croissants behind glass. Just you, your horse, and the morning breath of a dozen other riders waking up with the sunrise. Your stomach growls, rudely, actually, and that's when you hear it, the soft clink of metal bowls, the rustle of felt being rolled up, and the unmistakable sizzle of dried dung catching flame. That's right, no wood here, just carefully collected, sun-dried animal waste. Don't look so shocked, it burns hot. It's plentiful, and it doesn't leave splinters in your socks. The fire's up, and a squat pot settles above it, hanging from a simple iron frame. One of your fellow riders squats beside it, pouring in a thick white liquid that smells like sour yogurt and somehow, horse, you resist the urge to ask. What's cooking is sute sai, or milk tea, but not the kind with tapioca pearls or a touch of cinnamon. This is salty, buttery, and bracing. Mongols drink it all day long, breakfast, lunch, existential crises, rainstorms. The ingredients are simple: water, brick-like dried milk curds shaved down with a knife, and sometimes a pinch of tea leaves from a pouch that's made the journey from China. A sip warms your bones and smacks your taste buds. It's comforting, but in a very specific way, like being hugged by a gruff uncle who smells faintly of goat. Your next bite is solid, aaruul, hard, white chunks of dried curd that your teeth must negotiate with rather than bite. It's dairy, yes, but imagine yogurt that's been left out in the sun, sculpted by the wind, and then sanctioned as food by centuries of tradition. It's not about flavor, it's about fuel, protein, calcium, and the ability to survive 5 hours of riding with no bathroom break. Someone offers you a slice of something slightly less ambiguous: dried meat. Likely mutton, possibly beef, maybe something more creative. It's chewy but edible, and your jaw gets a workout. You nod in appreciation. This is breakfast on the steppe, not prepared, but preserved. There's no time for leisurely cooking when your empire needs expanding and your enemies are already breakfasting in Khwarezm. Historically, the Mongol diet was designed to travel. Everything you eat can be packed, dried, and eaten one-handed while galloping. It's not about culinary flair. It's about endurance. You ride hard, you eat fast, and you sleep under stars that don't care if your yogurt's gone runny. One mainstream fact historians agree on is the extraordinary mobility of the Mongol army. And breakfast played a small but sturdy role in that. Riders could go days with only dried curds and a leather sack of fermented milk sloshing at their side. And while the menu might seem monotonous, it was practical, nutritious, and, by Mongol standards, pretty deluxe. But even among historians, there's debate over just how extensive the breakfast spread was. Some claim Mongols had access to dried fruits and flour cakes from caravan trade routes. Others argue such luxuries were reserved for the upper echelons, khans and their households, not the average soldier curled around his saddlebag. Back at your fire, a boy trots by with a small, round loaf, a form of pan-fried dough called borzog. Sweet, fried, and faintly smoky, it's considered more of a treat than a staple. You manage to trade a spare horsehair string for one. The bite is warm, slightly crunchy, and gloriously oil-slicked. You savor it like a stolen pastry on a school trip. A few feet away, someone's trying to light a pipe with the same dung fire. The smell mingles with the milk steam and mutton sweat in the air. And you realize, this is the Mongol morning. It's not pretty, but it works. There's one curious tidbit whispered among old herders, that a proper warrior could judge the quality of breakfast by how many flies gathered around the milk pot. Too few, and it's probably spoiled. Too many, and the camp needs to move. Just right, you sip your tea and swat at a single persistent gnat. Breakfast perfection. And so, with your belly semi-full and your breath already freezing in front of you again, you sling yourself onto your horse, bounce slightly, and nudge forward across the frost-bitten plain. The Empire calls, and so does the next course. You ride with your knees snug against the horse's flanks. A rhythm you don't have to think about. Your body has learned the step better than your mind ever could. The breakfast heat fades quickly, replaced by a cold that slides down your back like a rude cousin. You reach into your saddlebag, fingers brushing leather, fur, and the comforting lump of a food pouch tied shut with sinew. Inside, more aaruul. It rattles around like pebbles but keeps your energy up, one tooth-chipping bite at a time. As you and your comrades spread out into loose ranks, there's little chatter. You don't waste breath when the wind tries to steal it, but your ears stay open. The creak of stirrups, the occasional hawk's cry, the soft jingling of iron bits, all part of the soundscape of your mobile breakfast club. Your horse has opinions too. It nudges the pouch swinging near your hip. Not for you, buddy, you think. The horse gets its own menu. Dried forage mixed with grain pellets and, on lucky days, a lump of lard mashed into hay. Mongol horses are famously hardy, able to graze under snow, survive on frozen roots, and still gallop like they're late for war. And yet, your mare acts like she deserves a 5-course meal and a blanket. You lean forward and mutter a joke into her mane. When we conquer a city, you're getting apples, pink ones. She flicks an ear, unimpressed. And yes, there's a very real scholarly debate about just how often Mongol warriors truly raided for luxuries versus surviving on what they carried. While some scholars emphasize their self-sufficiency, others suggest that pillaged goods, grain, dried fruits, spices, frequently made their way into the Mongol diet. You've yet to taste dried apricot on this ride, so maybe you're not raiding hard enough. Lunch is often just more breakfast. The same food you packed at dawn might stretch until dusk, but that doesn't mean it's flavorless. Take kumis, for example. You reach down and untie a skin bottle bouncing softly against your saddle. The fermented mare's milk within is fizzy, sour, and low alcohol, but it hits with the cultural force of a double espresso. You take a swig, then another. It burns a little, not in a bad way. In a "your ancestors are nodding in approval" kind of way. This isn't a solo drink. You pass the skin to the rider beside you, who raises it without a word. There's a quiet ritual here. Drink, nod, hand it along, like a communal flask on a mountain climb. Except this one could technically double as shampoo in an emergency. Historically, kumis wasn't just a beverage. It was medicine, mood booster, and social glue. Some legends even claim Genghis Khan himself owed his virility to his daily kumis. Fringe theory? Probably. Effective propaganda? Absolutely. After all, if your leader drinks milk that's half yogurt, half beer, and all weird, you better drink it too. By midday, you find a resting place. A shallow dip in the land offers shelter from the wind, and one of your unit's older riders starts setting up what looks like an impromptu kitchen. From his pack, he pulls something unexpected, a small, tightly wrapped bundle of noodles. That's right, Noodles. The Silk Road wasn't just about silk. With Chinese trade routes stretching into Central Asia, it's entirely possible that some Mongol warriors had access to dried noodles. And what better way to celebrate sitting still for 5 minutes than by boiling something? A fire is lit, another pot appears, and a hearty noodle broth begins to simmer. You watch with something approaching reverence as chunks of dried meat drop in. Swelling slowly, one rider even adds a handful of wild herbs gathered earlier, a touch of flavor. Or maybe just an attempt to hide the meat's vague identity. This humble soup, steaming and fragrant, becomes the highlight of the day. It's not gourmet, but when you're perched on a windswept plateau with your bow slung across your back, a hot meal can feel like the height of civilization. One mainstream fact worth chewing on, literally, is that Mongols prized efficiency over taste. Meals were designed to travel, keep well, and require minimal preparation. They didn't carry spices, they didn't need salt, they preserved with sun, wind, and patience. You start to see how this shapes not just food, but life. Still, there are whispers among the ranks of stranger delicacies. One story, passed down from a red-cheeked herder with half his teeth, claims that on the harshest winter nights, warriors would make soup from boiled leather, saddle straps, softened and stewed into a kind of survival broth. It's not widely confirmed by historians, but the tale has traction in folk memory, and you eye your saddle with new suspicion. After the soup, bellies warm, you all begin preparations again. Bowstrings are checked, saddles adjusted, and the aaruul pouch is passed around like a snack bowl at a late-night study group. Only here, the exam is surprise ambush survival, and wrong answers come with arrows. As you mount again, someone unwraps another oddity, a slab of something brown, glossy, and suspiciously sweet-smelling. This is kailmag, a thick, buttery dairy dessert made by simmering cream until it caramelizes. It's a rare treat, usually reserved for special occasions or lucky finds. You're handed a chunk and bite in. It melts, smooth and rich, tasting of milk and sun-warmed grass. You think back to this morning, of stiff aaruul and salty tea, and now this decadent bite. Mongol cuisine might be minimal, but it's not without its curveballs. Later, as your unit crests a low hill and spreads out along the ridge, you spot smoke on the horizon, maybe a village, maybe another camp. Either way, your day is far from over. You shift your weight in the saddle and reach for your water skin. Except it's not water, it's aarag, a stronger, funkier version of kumis. You take one whiff and almost cough. This one's been fermenting for a while. You sip anyway. It's what the others are doing. And you don't want to be that guy, the one who asks if there's a non-dairy option. By evening, as the sky goes lavender and your knees ache from hours in the saddle, the day's culinary journey catches up with you. You're not full, not exactly, but you're fueled, hardened, and mildly buzzed from milk products. This isn't the kind of food you'd write poems about, but it's the kind that lets you ride across empires, fight off boredom and enemies, and still have enough energy to boil noodles over a dung fire at sunset. And honestly, you've had worse. Your stomach rumbles softly as twilight sets in, not from hunger exactly, but from that special kind of digestion only fermented dairy and questionable dried meats can inspire. You shift in your saddle, bones aching in places you didn't know existed, and glance sideways. Everyone's slowing down. The long ride is over for now. You're making camp. By the time your feet hit the ground, you can already smell it: animal sweat, wood smoke, and something boiling. A small fire has been coaxed into life, barely visible in the dimming light, and beside it, an iron pot begins to rattle. The day's final meal is underway, and you're involved whether you like it or not. You pull off your boots, still slightly damp from a morning river crossing, and squish your toes into the hard-packed earth. A group of riders are huddled around another fire, each holding bowls carved from horn or wood. You wander over and plop down, earning a tired grunt of acknowledgement. Tonight's dinner, by all appearances, is bortsog, a kind of fried dough that tastes like the love child of a donut and a cracker. Someone has dropped a handful into the hot fat, and they bob like lazy swimmers. You reach out, grab a piece with your bare fingers, and promptly burn yourself. Tradition. The bortsog is crispy, faintly sweet, and undeniably greasy. It sticks to your fingers and coats your lips with a sheen of oil. It's not exactly light fare, but after a day in the saddle, it feels like the closest thing to luxury. You dunk it into a bowl of warm, murky tea, sute sai, that eternally salty, milky beverage that seems to haunt every Mongol sunrise and sunset. The tea doesn't make the bortsog better, but it makes it softer, which is good enough. Around you, someone starts telling a story, something about a fox that stole a general's gloves. Another rider snorts and corrects the details. And then you're off into the blur between history, folklore, and post-meal delirium. This is how Mongol camps run on food, less as a grand feast and more like warm glue, holding together men, horses, and the vast space between cities. Here's a mainstream historical fact you chew over along with your second piece of fried dough. The Mongols had no centralized kitchen or logistical food force like later European armies. Instead, every rider was his own pantry, chef, and garbage disposal. They carried their supplies in saddle packs, cooked what they could, and often relied on the land for the rest. This kind of culinary autonomy was part of their strength. It allowed them to move fast, break things, and never wait for a food wagon. But there are weirder corners of history too. For instance, did you know some Mongol warriors would make blood tea in extreme cases? When food ran low, they'd prick a vein from their horse and mix the blood with water and flour into a kind of emergency broth. It's one of those fringe tidbits that makes you sit back and stare at your horse differently. You're not about to try it, but you do give your mare an appreciative pat and whisper, "Thanks for keeping your veins to yourself today." Not everyone agrees that this blood broth was common practice, though some scholars argue it was more myth than menu, possibly exaggerated by foreign chroniclers to paint Mongols as barbaric. But still, the idea lingers, part horrifying, part resourceful. You remind yourself to eat all your bortsog tonight, just in case tomorrow brings culinary desperation. As the fire burns lower and the stars start to freckle the sky, you hear the soft clatter of wooden bowls being stacked, spoons licked clean and tucked away. One of the older riders leans back and lets out a long, satisfied sigh. "You know," he says, "back when I was with Subbotai's corps, we had these dried cheese balls the size of a fist. You'd hit someone with one, and it'd count as a ranged attack." Everyone laughs. You're not entirely sure he's joking. It's not all storytelling and dairy products, though. One of the younger warriors is bent over his gear, sharpening arrows with quiet focus. You join him. The metallic scrape of stone on blade fills the air for a while. Then, he reaches into his pack and pulls out a piece of meat wrapped in animal hide, dried, blackened, and barely recognizable. It's borts, cured beef or mutton sliced thin and left to air dry for weeks. Tougher than jerky, but lighter, and it lasts almost forever. You accept a sliver, chew thoughtfully, and try not to think too hard about the teeth you'll probably lose before winter. Borts is survival food, not tasty, not fancy, but effective. You can grind it into powder, mix it into boiling water, and, bam, instant protein soup. It's the Mongol equivalent of ramen noodles and chicken bouillon combined. You make a mental note to prep a batch when you're home, whenever that is. Later, as you wander toward your bedroll, a smell stops you. Someone is making tagarn idi, a collective term for dairy-based snacks, ranging from curds to butter fudge. This version smells sweet and sour all at once. You lean over, and the cook offers you a pinch from a sticky wooden tray. It's oddly addictive, grainy, rich, slightly salty, and with that unmistakable tang of horse milk. You chew and nod as if you understand the recipe. You don't. This is where things blur. The meal has ended, but the food lingers, on your tongue, in your pack, on your breath. Mongol cooking doesn't chase flavor. It chases survival, but every so often, it surprises you. A honeyed dough ball here, a fragrant herb there, and suddenly, it's not just calories, it's culture. As you settle onto your sheepskin pad and pull your cloak around your shoulders, you listen to the camp breathing. Horses snort, someone coughs, another breaks wind so softly it might be spiritual. You look up at the moon, white and cold and watching. Tomorrow will come with more riding, more chewing, more sour milk, and you'll greet it with dry lips, strong legs, and probably another piece of aaruul. You drift off with the taste of it still in your mouth. Hard and chalky, and a little bit heroic. The next morning, you're up before the sun. Though the cold makes your limbs protest with every movement, the camp stirs around you, slowly, reluctantly. Horses whinny, embers are poked, and someone nearby coughs with the raw intensity of a man who's spent years shouting into the wind. You stretch, rub the sleep from your eyes, and reach for your pack. Breakfast. Again, it's not exciting, but it's necessary. You open a small pouch of aaruul. That stubborn, rock-hard dried curd. One chunk almost chips a tooth. So you let it soften in your cheek like candy. If candy tasted like salty lemon chalk and had the density of compressed calcium. You look around. Another rider is spooning something from a hide flask into his tea, fermented mare's milk. Or aaruul. He offers you some with a smirk that says, "You'll regret this." You try it anyway. It's frothy, slightly alcoholic, and tastes like someone carbonated a yogurt. You nod as if it's growing on you. It's not, but hey, hydration. Today's ride is long. You've heard whispers, maybe a raid, maybe just moving to fresher grazing lands. Whatever it is, it involves hours on horseback and very little stopping. That means your stomach needs to be full enough to function, but not so full that it starts a mutiny at every gallop. So you break out the essentials, a pouch of borts, a bit of aaruul, and, God help you, more salty tea. Now here's your mainstream historical fact of the day. The Mongol diet wasn't just about meat and milk, it was structured around mobility. Riders would eat small, calorie-dense meals that could be consumed on the move. They might drink broth straight from a flask, or chew dried meat while in full trot. The whole system was designed for an army that didn't stop moving. And it worked. This logistical fluidity helped Genghis Khan's forces cover up to 100 miles a day, overrunning enemies who still believed roads were necessary for travel. You, on the other hand, are struggling to sit upright. Every jolt of the horse feels like a personal attack from a vengeful saddle. You pull a strip of borts from your bag, gnaw on it until your jaw cramps, and chase it with a mouthful of sute sai. You will not die from breakfast. Not today. The morning blurs into afternoon. The terrain shifts subtly, open grassland giving way to scraggly hills and patches of stubborn brush. You ride past a group of herders leading a train of yaks, their backs loaded with wooden crates and felt bundles. One of them waves, holding up a cheese the size of your head. You wave back, unsure if it's a greeting or a warning. Around noon, the caravan halts by a frozen stream. You dismount, stretch your back, and walk a few paces to feel like a human again. Then someone calls out, a rare treat has arrived. A goat. The animal is tied by the legs, calmly chewing cud, oblivious to its impending legacy. You've never seen a field butchering before, but you soon learn Mongols do it with care. The animal is brought down swiftly, respectfully. The meat is cut into strips, laid out on clean hides. Bones are cracked for marrow. Nothing is wasted. Here's your quirky tidbit. Mongol warriors sometimes cooked meat by placing it inside the carcass of another animal, then burying the whole thing under hot stones, like an ancient slow cooker with a flair for horror. They believed this sealed in the flavor and heat. Whether that's genius or grotesque depends entirely on how hungry you are. Today's goat, however, is destined for a more straightforward treatment. Thin slices are skewered and cooked over an open flame. You can barely wait. The smell alone is enough to make your eyes water, not from smoke, but sheer anticipation. When the meat is ready, you don't hesitate. You grab a piece, scald your fingers, and bite. It's tender, smoky, a little gamey, and you almost forget your jaw has been working overtime on dried protein for the past week. You chew slowly, savoring every bite, knowing this might be the last hot meal for days. As everyone eats, a debate begins, not about the goat, but about horses, specifically, whether mare's milk makes a better warrior than sheep's cheese. One older man swears that the calcium in aaruul keeps your bones from breaking in battle. Another claims fermented milk keeps the gut strong and the spirit sharper. A third just shrugs and says, if it fills you, it works. There's an open scholarly debate in modern circles too. Some researchers argue that the Mongol reliance on dairy, especially from horses, played a key role in their metabolic endurance and physical resilience. Others say it's overstated, romanticized by chroniclers impressed with the exoticism of steppe life. After all, no one writes poetry about barley. You're not sure where you stand on the science. But you know this. You've eaten more forms of milk in the last 48 hours than in the rest of your life combined. And your stomach hasn't exploded. So maybe there's something to it. After the meal, the bones are gathered and burned. A practice to keep away spirits, or scavengers. Depending on whom you ask. You refill your flask with river water. Tie your pack tight, and swing back onto your horse with the grace of a sack of potatoes. The sun is already beginning its descent, and there's still ground to cover. Evening approaches, and with it, the prospect of another night on the steppe. But for now, you feel oddly full, not just in your stomach, but in your chest. There's something about eating with these people, this mix of practicality and ritual, hardship and humor, that makes you feel connected, not just to them, but to the endless history under your boots. You glance at the horizon. Smoke curls from a distant camp, faint and gray against the amber sky. Somewhere out there, another group of riders is boiling tea, chewing curd, and arguing about cheese, just like you. And that's oddly comforting. Later that night, you lie on your side beneath a patchy fur blanket, stomach surprisingly content for once, though you're still convinced your jaw has aged a decade from chewing dried meat all day. The fire's glow flickers on nearby faces, casting long shadows that shift with every gust of wind. Somewhere across the camp, someone is softly singing, a nasal, warbling tune that sounds like it belongs to the wind more than the singer. You don't know the words, but it comforts you anyway. Your hands rest on your stomach, and you think, really think, about the food. Not just today's goat or the tea that somehow always tastes like liquid campfire. You think about how everything you've eaten has been tailored not for pleasure but for movement, for endurance, for life on horseback. It's not a menu, it's a mindset. The older warrior beside you, the one with the cough and the cracked fingernails, chuckles and says, in battle, it's not the sword that wins, it's the stomach. You nod, unsure if that's a proverb or indigestion talking. You've picked up a few preferences. 2. You find yourself craving the acidic tang of aaruul before bed, though it still smells like wet wool socks. And you've come to appreciate the way Bortz forces you to eat slowly, thoughtfully. Even the aaruul, once your sworn enemy, has become an acceptable chew toy when you're bored. It's not gourmet, but it's grounding. Your horse snorts in the dark. You glance over and catch its sleepy eye. That beast has carried you hundreds of miles on the strength of dried grass and routine. It doesn't complain, it just eats, moves, survives, like the rest of you. As dawn breaks the next day, you're already saddling up again. Breakfast. It's a pouch of reheated bone broth, kept warm overnight in a leather skin near the fire. Not much, but it slides down easily. You tie up the rest of your rations, 2 chunks of dried goat, some hard cheese, and a handful of pine nuts someone bartered off a passing trader. Luxurious. The wind picks up, tugging at your sleeves. In the distance, a hawk circles, scanning the open plain. You wonder if it knows what it's looking for, or if it's just flying until something presents itself. Today's mainstream historical fact might make you laugh. Mongol warriors didn't just rely on milk and meat, they also cultivated tight networks of supply lines across their vast empire. During campaigns, they established relay stations and mobile depots, stocked with provisions and fresh horses. In some cases, dried foods would be delivered by fast couriers across hundreds of miles, ensuring the army never ran out of sustenance. It's less wild survival and more military logistics, but make it nomadic. But here's the quirky angle you weren't expecting. Some Mongols carried tiny sacks of tea leaves or roasted barley in their boots, not for convenience, but because it was believed the constant pressure of riding would warm and soften the contents. Makes you look at foot snacks differently, doesn't it? As the day rolls on, so does the debate. This time, it's about onions. One rider swears that raw wild onions, picked from the riverbanks, can cure anything from a cold to heartbreak. Another says too many onions make your horse dislike you. A third claims Genghis Khan himself refused them because of the dragon smell. The conversation devolves into laughter. Someone burps dramatically, and the matter is left unresolved. Scholars today are no better. Some argue that steppe herbs and wild vegetables played a greater role in the Mongol diet than we give credit for. Others think those greens were more emergency food than routine fuel. Either way, you're not risking dragon breath today. By the time evening returns, you're back in motion. You've crossed another 30 miles. The terrain has changed, more hills now, more stone and less grass, fewer goats, more wind. The food hasn't changed, though. You reach for a stick of dried fat wrapped in hide. Tear it with your teeth, and let the blandness coat your tongue. There's a strange comfort in the sameness. You chew, you ride, you chew again. Eventually, the day ends not with ceremony, but with stillness. The fire crackles, horses snort. Someone plays a two-string fiddle with a bow made from horsehair and luck. The tune drifts into your bones like smoke. You take one last sip of salty tea, no sugar, just heat and ritual, and lie down. As you drift off, you think, these weren't men who ate to live. These were men who ate to ride, to conquer, to survive winter and war and hunger alike. They didn't have variety, they had intention. Every bite, no matter how weird or chewy, was chosen for a reason. You're starting to get it now. Not just the food, but the frame of mind. Every hardened curd and fermented sip is part of something bigger than you, a life designed for movement, for resilience, for doing the impossible on a near-empty stomach. Tomorrow, there'll be more riding, more dust, more aaruul. You'll chew until your jaw clicks, and you'll complain about it less than yesterday. Maybe that's the Mongol breakfast effect. Wind down, 300 words. And now, the horses are still, the fire is low, barely a whisper of warmth against the deep chill. The sky above you stretches endless, salted with stars, each one older than the tales whispered around the flames. Your body is tired, but not broken. Your stomach isn't full, but it's calm, steady, adapted. You lie on your back, staring upward, listening to the subtle sounds of night on the steppe, the gentle snuffle of horses, the creak of leather, the shift of someone turning in their sleep. The taste of salted curd still lingers faintly on your tongue, a reminder of where you are, of who you've become. And as your thoughts soften with the dark, you realize that this life, the constant movement, the quiet meals shared by warriors, the strange alchemy of milk, meat, and motion, it's not as far away as you once believed. It exists in every bite taken with purpose, in every journey fueled not by abundance, but by resolve. So you close your eyes. Let the hum of wind be your lullaby, the slow rhythm of hooves in your memory be your comfort. Tomorrow, there will be more roads, more chewable cheese, more tea too salty to question. But for now, let your breath slow, let the stars keep their watch, let the history of the steppe rock you gently into sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.